Recently, our team returned home from a week-long missions trip from Brazil. We were able to partner with 3 other churches who had active prison ministries. Some were already established, and some had just actually started to begin. We started out in the city called Foz de Iguaçu, and that night we got there, we were invited into a small group of our host home where we were staying. It was so cool to see the heart of this church and the heart for their small group coincide with our hearts for our small groups here. It was neat to connect with them, and just like our small groups here, we ate some pretty good food at the end of our small group. While in Foz, we went into our first women's prison, and after setting up a small sound system in a real small square that split 2 halls of cells, we placed the speaker of the sound system facing down one side of the hall, and I spoke on the other side. The ladies were confined to their cells. They weren't able to come out, and there was about 4 to 8 ladies in a 10 by 15 cell. Most of them were in their cells, clinging to the bars or crouching down, listening, but they were so attentive. Others were either cleaning their cells or laying in their bunks, pretty disengaged. I spoke about how the devil knows their name, but calls them by their sin. Yet God knows their sin, but calls them by their name. And when I was done speaking, we ended up being able to go cell by cell, and Caroline and Judy took one hall, and myself and Annie, our interpreter, took the other hall. We were able to speak life and encourage and speak directly and personally into these ladies' lives. At that point, all the ladies that weren't paying much attention initially were at their cell doors. It was simply amazing. These girls had tears running down their cheeks and had their hands out, palms up out of their cell doors, receiving what the Lord was speaking over them. After that, they ended up breaking out in worship, and it was so powerful and such a God moment. Actually, this particular prison had just started a work ministry teaching women how to sew rugs together out of actually old uniform scraps, prison uniform scraps. We were gifted with these rugs, which is something that is so precious and so dear to us. That afternoon, we went into Paraguay, into another women's prison. This one was a low security prison, so here we were able to lay hands on the ladies and pray for them, and they lined up for that. Many of them had prayer requests for their families and for their upcoming court cases. But that one-on-one ministry with these ladies was so incredibly powerful. So we ended up traveling to Curitiba, Brazil, where we teamed up with a large church there that provided breakfast for us before we all loaded up and made our way to another prison. We had a pretty good sized team with us, and this team goes in monthly to the same prison. So they have already established relationships with the guards and with the inmates and even the inmates' children. They actually have a ministry that goes into the daycare of the prison while the rest go and minister to the mothers of those kiddos. We had a full worship team with us. It was drums, electric guitars, and singers. It was awesome. And here we were able to stay behind a really thick wired fence while all the inmates were out on a huge courtyard in front of us. We did 2 services at this prison, and actually it was just myself and our interpreter who were able to go out on the courtyard and minister and talk to these ladies. They were so attentive and so hungry, and you should have heard them worship. It was absolutely amazing. One of the last prisons that we went into was a men's prison in a city called Guarapuava. It was actually quite interesting. There's a Christian businessman who owns a factory inside the prison where the inmates made work boots, not only for the inmates there, but to sell to outside companies. We walked into this factory where all these men were working on making these work boots, and the businessman ended up shutting down the factory as we set up chairs in this U-shaped and we had service. There were 4 other pastors with us, and so we did a little bit of worship. One pastor spoke, and then I spoke, again on how the devil knows their name but calls them by their sin, yet God knows their sin and calls them by their name. And there were men with tears in their eyes trying to wipe them away discreetly. But just like the women's prison, they were so receptive and so respectful. Overall, it is just awesome to see the body of Christ unite together. We united with pastors from different churches, all kinds of ministries, businessmen, to us right here, from Amarillo Fellowship. It was amazing to see the body of Christ work together in Brazil. Brazil is a country that Amarillo Fellowship has a heart for. We have already began really establishing some great relationships with churches there and people individually. And we're going to go back as often as we can because we believe it's spreading the love and hope of Jesus Christ, not just in Amarillo and in this community, but all over the world. And we're going to continue to go wherever God calls us to. Our hope is that more people from Amarillo will partner with us to spread the word, because I'm telling you, it's absolutely worth it.